So if we're doing day three is our arc and angle portion. There are three different kinds of arcs and angles that you see in circles. The first one is if they intersect interior. Remember, interior means inside. So if they cross through the middle of your circle or through the inside of your circle in any way, kind of looks like this, or it could look like this, then you're going to follow this set of rules. The other two we'll talk about in just a minute. So for our interior intersections, it matters what the arc is for you to figure out the angle. So a general rule is your angle equals both arcs added together divided by 2. So if I'm looking a little more specific, and I'm just looking right here where it says angle 1, I can figure out angle 1 by looking at the two arcs that open up to it. So thinking back from Friday of last week. Friday of last week, we said if this is the arc, the angle, the arc that opens, the intercepted arc, is the one that is outside. If this was a slice of pizza, this would be the pizza, that would be the crust. Now, if this angle is 1, there is always a vertical angle pair that is across. That means that one would also be 1. And this would be the other arc we're using. You're going to kind of stay in the same plane. So you're going to stay like in one line. You're not going to ever crisscross or anything. So for me to figure out the measure of angle 1, I'm going to use both of those arcs. So specifically, that would be arc AD plus arc BC divided by 2. Now there's two ways you can figure out angle 2. You can do the same method where it's arc plus arc divided by 2, or I know that angle 1 plus angle 2 have to make something. They make a linear pair. If you remember, a linear pair is equal to 180 degrees. So there's a linear pair right here. The measure of angle 2 is just 180 minus the measure of angle 1. Now it's a little bit confusing when we're just talking letters like this, so let's get into an example with numbers. In number 1, it says I need to find the measure of angle DAN. Remember, angle equals arc plus arc divided by 2. So I'm going to write that in my box first. Now that I've written it, I need to figure out where DAN is. Remember, you just follow the letters from outside to inside to outside. Angle DAN is where I just put that yellow dot. So that means I need to look going across. I'm going to do my best to not give you circles that have multiple measures where you have to try and figure out which one you're using. It's going to be pretty clear. So it doesn't matter which order you do the arc plus arc. I'm going to go from left to right just because that's how we read. So here I have 88 and 114. So my formula I would be typing in my calculator is 88 plus 114 divided by 2. I want you to type that in your calculator, get your answer, write it in the space below. You should have gotten a measurement of 101 degrees. Remember, these are angles. Angles still have degrees on them. Now for looking at number 2. I want you to try number 2. If you need to check the key to make sure you're correct, the key will be on Schoology separate from this video, so you're welcome to check the key. I would make sure you're remembering angle equals arc plus arc divided by 2. I would pause the video, solve this problem, and then come back to it. Okay. So now we're on the back side. Now something is different here. On 1 and 2, they both said the measure of an angle. 3 and 4 are both telling me the measure of an arc. So that means I'm going to need to work backwards. If I'm working backwards, we're going to make a set of rules or a set of steps that we're going to follow. So that's what I wrote at the top. Now here's how we're going to approach this. I know, because we did it a second ago, it's angle equals arc plus arc divided by 2. That is the formula we're using to figure out if it intersects inside the circle. So now I need to figure out what I've got. I know I need this arc that I just made blue. There should be a letter D right there. You want to make your notes look nice and pretty like they're supposed to. I know I have two things. I know I have a 73 outside, and I know I have a 128 inside. Inside is going to be my angle. Outside is going to be my arc. So I'm going to fill in what I know to this template that I just made. Angle equals arc plus arc. So angle, that's 128, equals arc, that's 73 because I know it, plus arc, but I don't know the other side. When I don't know something in math, I just put an X in place so I can figure it out. So now I've set up my equation. It says 128 is equal to 73 plus X divided by 2. Make sure when you're setting this process up, especially when you're using the calculator, you're doing control divide first. So that way you're not dividing a number at the end and getting a weird number. Now, if I'm working backwards here, my first step is to undo this fraction. Right now this says divided by 2. So opposite of that would be multiply by 2. So step 1, when I work backwards, is to multiply both sides by 2. Oops, can't see that. There we go. When I multiply this right side by 2, I don't actually do any math. The only thing that's happening is I'm canceling out those 2's. When I multiply the left side by 2, I do math. I type it in the calculator, I get my number, I move on. 128 times 2 gives me 256. Remember, even though I'm giving you the answers, you should still be practicing typing these in the calculator just so you have enough practice using the calculator that you are successful on the test. So now I've gotten rid of the bottom part of that fraction, so now I just have a one-step equation. So then step 2 is just solve for x. You're either going to add or subtract. So solve for x by adding or solve for x by subtracting. Here, because this is a positive 73, in order for me to undo that, I'm going to subtract 73 from both sides. Once I do that, I'm left with x, and I'm finished. Type that in your calculator, get your answer. That should give you 183 degrees. Remember, arcs are also in degrees. Don't forget your units on your answers. Now, number 4 is very similar, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a helper before I let you finish it on your own. It'll be the same as number 2. You can check your answer in Schoology. I know I need the measure of QT. That's down here. So that's what I'm trying to find out. That's an arc, so I'm still working backwards. But if I'm going up and down like this direction, I need the angle that's right here where I put this yellow dot. Because you're going to kind of stay in a line. You don't want to zigzag through your circle. So because I don't know that one, but I do know the 79, and we already talked, if you're missing an angle, that is a linear pair because they make a line, I'm just going to subtract from 180. So in order for me to figure out what that is, it's just 180 minus 79. That should give me 101. Now that I've got that, I'm going to plug it in and do the exact same steps I did in number 3. Pause the video, finish number 4. Once you finish number 4, if you are not confident in your answer, you're welcome to check it on Schoology. Otherwise, just star it, go back to it later, and continue on. Okay, so the next type of intersections you have, those are intersections that happen on the circle. If they happen on the circle, you're going to use two things. You need a tangent and you need a secant. Your tangent is what we just talked about on Monday. Something that touches your circle one time does not go through your circle. Your secant is something that touches your circle twice and it can go through your circle. Both of those things intersect at your point of tangency. Now, because these are just arcs and angles here, there's no double arcs, there's no double angles, there's nothing. The only thing I need to worry about is what we did on Friday of last week when we were doing inscribed angles. In case you don't have it, or you need to see it in a different way, we're going to make a have-need chart. If I need my angle, I take my arc and I divide by 2. If I need my arc, I take my angle and I multiply by 2. So it's the same process. I'm not adding a different formula. Same exact process that you did on Friday of last week. So go back to day 1 if you need to review that. So I need to be looking at what I have every time. You can just cross those out. We'll just go straight into the 2 examples. In number 5, this says the measure of angle, DEG. So that means I need angle. So I'm going to take the arc divided by 2. Now, in order for me to make sure I'm doing the correct thing, I need to figure out where DEG is. DEG is where I just put that yellow dot, which means the arc I'm using is the arc I'm given. So the only thing I need to do here is plug in my arc to this little formula I created. So my arc is 308. I'm going to divide it by 2. That's going to give me my angle measure, then I'm finished. There's no extra steps, there's nothing. It's just plugging it in to this formula here. When I plug that into my calculator, I should get, I'm going to give you a couple seconds to type it in. .154 degrees. That's it, then I'm finished. If you look at the next one, number 6, this says I need the measure of arc. We need to change this, there's a typo. I need XW. That means I need this arc here. Before I do anything, I'm going to write arc equals angle times 2, because that's what it says from my need half chart. Now that I've got this piece, I'm going to fill in what I know. I don't know the angle that goes here. I do know the angle on the other side. So kind of like we did on number 4, for us to figure out a missing angle, we're going to take this angle, this linear pair, and we're going to subtract from 180 to figure out what we need to multiply by. That means it's 180 minus 151. A linear pair are 2 angles that touch that make a line. So my tangent line means there's always going to be a linear pair there. Give you a couple seconds to type that in. 180 minus 151 in your calculator should have given you 29. So now I know the angle is 29 degrees. That's the angle right there. So now I'm going to take that 29 and I'm going to plug it into my formula. That becomes 29 times 2. Give you a second to type it in. That should give me 58 degrees. Okay, last one. My last one is something that intersects outside. They are exterior intersections. That means it is happening outside of your circle. And there's kind of a little formula we're going to use. We're going to skip all of these blanks for right now. And we're going to use a color coding system. I'm going to color code 2 separate things. All of these, the formula working forwards is angle equals big arc minus small arc divided by 2. I had to write kind of small so you could see it. So I could fit it. Now, there's 2 different arcs on all of these. Each of these you're looking at the angle where I'm putting the blue dot. So that's angle A, angle A, angle A. Doesn't really matter what 2 pieces you have, if you have 2 secants or a secant and a tangent or 2 tangents. The only pattern you have to recognize is there's 2 kind of arcs. When you're looking at the arcs, you're looking between the lines. So if I'm looking between the lines, the arc that is furthest away from the angle is going to be my biggest angle. So on all of these, I'm going to mark my big angle, the same color. And I'm going to circle what I did with that color in my formula. I'm going to do the same process with the smaller one. With my smaller arc, that's the one that's going to be closest to the angle. I'm marking mine yellow. And I'm also going to circle it in my formula so I can visually see, okay, that number needs to go in that spot in the formula. I'm not looking at any arc that is not between those 2 lines. If it's not between the 2 lines, I don't really care about it. Sorry, I had to refocus. It wasn't focused anymore. Now, If I look at number 7, I know that I'm working forwards. So that becomes big minus small divided by 2. Please note, the very beginning thing we did, we added. That was only if they intersected inside. These intersecting outside, so I am subtracting. So if I'm doing big and small, I need to get my colors again and color code. Bigger arc, smaller arc. So here are my two arcs. All I'm going to do is plug those into my formula, type it in my calculator, and then I have the angle. So bigger out of these two is 140, small is 66, divided by 2. I don't need to separate that. I'm going to type it directly in the calculator all at once. And we're going to go from there. So if it's big minus small divided by 2, that's 37. And that's my answer. Once I type it in the calculator, I'm finished. Number 8, I want you to try on your own. But first, before we start, I'm going to make sure we know exactly what we're talking about. Remember, color code helps your brain recognize patterns. So I'm going to color code where my two arcs have to be. Big is furthest away, small is closest. If this one is the big one, this is the small one. I don't have a number in this orange one and this big one. So in order for me to find a missing arc in my circle, I need to do something. If I'm missing something in the entire circle, but I know the other two pieces, I'm going to take that and I'm going to subtract from 360. Because I know the entire circle is 360 degrees. That was from part 1 of this unit. So I can just subtract and figure out my answer. So 360 minus 88 minus 62 should give me 210. So that means that arc, the big arc, is 210. Now I want you to plug it into the equation that we made. Big minus small divided by 2. Get your answer. Once you have your answer, you can either pause this video, check the notes on Schoology, or go back at the end, because this was not the only problem I asked you to pause and solve. And then you can do it that way. We're almost finished. We've got 4 more, and they are a lot easier than you think they are. I'm going to color code number 9, and you're going to do the same thing that you did in number 8. You're going to pause the video, you're going to solve, and I'm not going to give you the hint of how to solve that little one. Use number 8. We are doing it the exact same way. Okay, last one we need to do forwards would be number 10. Number 10 is still asking for the angle outside. Kind of the same process, but 10 is a little bit trickier, so I'm going to give you a little bit of help. I'm going to color code, same way I have been. Your brain recognizes patterns. The more you do something regularly, the more likely you are to remember it. So there's my two pieces. There's my small, there's my big. I know big, but I don't know small. So if I don't know something, I'm going to subtract from 360. But something is still not marked on this circle for me to figure out what I need. Right now I have this whole piece right here. That whole piece happens to be a semicircle. A semicircle is equal to 180 degrees. So for me to figure out that yellow sliver, that's 360 minus 180 minus 94 minus 67. Now whatever is left is your small. You can plug it into your formula, and you can check your work with the note key on Schoology. Okay, last 2. I'm going to show you one, you're going to do the other one, however you need to. Now notice in both 11 and 12, now it's asking for an arc. That means I'm going back to working backwards, because all of these equations started with finding some form of angle. I'm going to write my template, same way I have been. Now last time we worked backwards, it did not matter where we put our numbers. This time when we work backwards, it does matter. So the angle still stays outside by itself, but I need to be able to say which one's big and which one's small, which means I need to color code. There's big. There's small. So now that I have big and small color coded, I'm going to fill in what I know. I know that the angle is 56. And I have big because big is furthest from the angle. So that's 160. I don't know small. So that's going to be my x divided by 2. Now these are the same steps as before. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. Remember, when you multiply a fraction by the number on bottom, all it does is cancel out. I'm not actually multiplying anything else, but I am multiplying the other side. So I am going to type in my calculator 56 times 2. 56 times 2 give me 112. Then I can just start solving. I need to make sure x is by itself, so I'm going to move my number over. When I do that, I'm given negative 48 is equal to negative x. Now x is still not by itself, so this problem has one extra step. If you are solving for small, you're always going to have to do this last step, and that last step is to divide by negative 1. You don't want to have a negative x if there is a negative in front. Your answer should be positive. All that does is change the sign to positive. Last one, look at number 12. On number 12, I'm doing the same thing. I'm color coding my big and my small. I know I'm working backwards because it's asking me for an arc, not an angle. Now that I know I'm working backwards, I'm going to set this up the same way as number 12. I want you to attempt it. You can always check yourself or get whatever step you need in the notes on Schoology. If you get stuck or need any help on your practice, my door is open. You can just come on through and come see me. Have a great day.